And welcome in everybody to another episode of the High Low Sports Podcast. We appreciate y'all for joining us here on this Wednesday evening, or if you're checking us out on one of your favorite places to watch podcasts later on in the week. It is always a pleasure to hang out during the week and talk about what's going on in the world of sports with you all. It is DJ, joined as always by my co-host Kelcey. And you know what, Kelcey? So it's been a busy week. It was not quite as busy as last week with the NFL draft going on, but we got a lot to get into from the NFL draft, going through all of that as well now that we get the aftermath. Plus, the NBA playoffs are in full swing. Most of the first round, some of the first round is already wrapped up. So we miss these people a lot. It's been from the mock draft to the draft show. We haven't got a chance to sit down and chat with the people to the same extent.
Yeah, I mean, we missed a whole lot. We missed, wow, a wild half of a first round. I don't even think it's fully, we're not even fully done yet.
Hmm.
But there has been some movers and shakers already in the first round. Some people holding on by a thread. Some people just throwing in the towel, for lack of a better term. And yeah, it's the draft. There were some surprises. If you guys missed our draft special, go check it out on the Belly Up Sports YouTube. It's all there, all 4 hours of it.
Or in some change. Like if you feel free to fast forward as you need to. Don't expect you to sit there and watch the whole thing through.
Yeah, no, but it was a good time. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about there. A whole bunch of soccer stuff happening recently, and then you name it. There's been a lot, to say the least. So it's been fun. Baseball, who knows anymore what's happening? Just injuries to my fantasy baseball team. Nothing more, nothing less.
Yeah, those unfortunately, the injuries to fantasy, just fantasy sports in general, they always find a way to strike at the most inopportune moments. But we got a whole lot of that to get into as well. But that's going to go and take us into the opening segment of our show. That is the tip off, of course, brought to you by friends over at SeatGeek. Use code Belly of Sports for $20 off your first set of tickets on whether it's any sporting event, any concerts, anything that you need tickets to. Go ahead and go to SeatGeek and use code Belly Up Sports for $20 off. And we're gonna go ahead and start things off in the association, since we haven't talked about that in a little bit. We got the NBA playoffs in full swing. We got two teams already swept out of there, the Thunder sweeping the Pelicans, as well as the Timberwolves, surprisingly to me, sweeping the Suns. And then we had the gentleman's sweep of all gentlemen sweep, the Nuggets gentlemen sweeping the Lakers, rounding out three of the four in the West already taken care of. And then we have the Mavericks and the Clippers as well. That one feels like 7 games or a very competitive 6. That one's far from over. Then we go to the East, and it just feels like a cluster across the board for the most part. Knicks and the 76ers felt like it was over, but it's far from over now. The Celtics, it felt like they should have cruised. They let Miami get one, and then unfortunately, Kristaps, and now he's injured, so we have to wait and see a little bit there. Cleveland and Orlando, if that doesn't go 7 games, I don't know what will go 7 games at this point. From 2-0 to 2-2 to 3-2 by a game-winning block. Like, doesn't get a whole lot closer than that. Razor close. And I believe I'm missing one more, if I'm not mistaken.
Bucks and Pacers.
Bucks and Pacers. Thank you. I don't know how I almost forgot that one. Oh yeah, that's
Pacers.
because that game should have been over that should have been over like 3 days ago. But the Pacers let the Bucks hang around, and you never know with Giannis and Dame starting to roll their way back. So
Yeah.
we've gone full circle on it as well too. So Kelcey, I'm gonna let you take the initial reins here. Which series of these ones is the one where you're like, huh, I got something to say about that?
Oh, do I ever have something to say?
We're gonna leap right into this one. We're gonna start hot and then work our way back.
We'll go from not seeing the folks for a week and a half to all of a sudden dropping a bomb first thing. But look, I don't think there's any question. There's a lot of questions coming out of LA right now. And I'm not talking about the Clippers for once. It's down the hallway. And that is with the Lakers. If anybody has been following along, you mentioned it. The gentleman of all gentlemen sweeps 4-1. I felt like they just gifted him a game just so LeBron wouldn't get swept in the series. But I don't know what to say about this Lakers team. There's lots of commentary going out there, whether it be from former players, current players, players in the know, players not in the know, fans, pundits, everybody. And they all kind of have the same message, and I'm not going to disagree with it for once. And that's they have no plan in LA. Their plan is LeBron, save me. LeBron, coach us up. LeBron, do this. LeBron, do that. LeBron. That's their plan in life. And even the Cavaliers, through all their bad years, at least had a plan. This is embarrassing. Darvin Ham, I said it when he got hired. I didn't think it was the right hire. I didn't think it was going to be a good situation for him. And lo and behold, halfway through the season, every player that got in the game completely ignored Darvin Ham's everything. Every one of his coaching points, every one of his plans, every one of his plays, all the tactics, gone. And forget about it. It you feel bad, hating on an NBA coach, right? They're an NBA coach for a reason. I'm not saying Darvin Ham couldn't be an NBA coach somewhere else, but putting Darvin Ham as a coach for LeBron in LA could not have been a worse situation for him to start out his career as a head coach. It was too much, too fast, too soon. And LeBron, just like LeBron tends to do for young coaches who don't have a spine built in or don't have a I shouldn't say that about a spine, but don't have any sort of weight to what they say yet. They're not an Eric Spoelstra. At the end of the day, that's a big one. Ty Lue, they're not a Ty Lue for that matter. A former player who is an absolute standout in college, knows the game in and out. Even Ty Lue had more weight. Frank Vogel, we saw with Frank Vogel, LeBron just kind of threw him to the side. Somehow he got another job. And then Darvin Ham, I don't know what's going to happen here, but I don't see a situation where Darvin Ham has another year in LA, and it's to blame LeBron at the end of the day. Um, LeBron, through all the greatness he brings, there is so much downside as a head coach. You don't want to take that on because it's a no-win situation. If you win a game, it's because of LeBron. If you lose a game, it's because of you. How does that help a coach ever? Phil Jackson had the best, way to handle that. We remember Phil Jackson's name because he put players in the right positions to win. Whereas with LeBron and coaching LeBron, it's almost like he doesn't care what a coach is going to think. He's just going to keep doing the things that he knows how to do. And by all means, he's one of the greatest players to ever play the game. I'm not taking anything away from him, but there's a coachability factor to him that doesn't exist nowadays because the truth is he's probably smarter than most coaches that are out there today. And it's not going to be successful. So for all you Lakers fans out there, ha ha ha, ha ha, ha 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 ha. For everybody else, I'm sorry you have to watch this train wreck. Nobody enjoys it. But yeah, it's a tough situation for Darvin Ham. You feel bad for him. But I don't feel bad for the Lakers because Kings fan can never feel bad for the Lakers. But yeah, LeBron, at this point in time, he's just go ahead and put the suit on and just take your place on the sideline as the head coach of the LA Lakers now because your playing career, half the time you don't even play. The other half of the time you're just sitting there as a kind of show off guy, padding stats. Let Anthony Davis take this team. You go be the head coach. Enjoy your time as a head coach, making $10 million a year. You get to coach your son. Have fun. That's where I see this happening because LeBron, if you're going to keep coaching the team from the floor, you might as well just take a seat on the bench because you're not playing when you're coaching. So figure it out because it's not helping anybody. LeBron used to be able to flip a switch and take over, but now it's not even the case. So, yeah, for the Lakers out there, Darvin Ham was a mistake. As long as LeBron's on the team, and it's going to continue to be that way. So,
What's kind of interesting with the conundrum is there is obviously like the narrative with LeBron that it's very hard to coach. You see like the cycle of him as well too, but that takes away from the fact when the coach really clearly doesn't seem to have a full control of things because it wasn't just him tuning out Darvin Ham too. It was
is
Anthony
everybody.
Davis looking at the clipboard and rolling his eyes as D'Angelo Russell sitting at the end of the bench. It's Austin Reeves. Like it was, you look around, it's
Austin Reeves yelling at the coach to put him back in the game when nobody on the floor takes a shot in 2 shot clocks back to back. And then yelling at Ham to put him in the game, and Ham just being like, "All right, get in there." Like that, you can't have that. No professional, college, little league, it doesn't matter. You should never, as a player, be able to show up a coach like that. And as a coach, you should never allow it to get to that point because you're the coach. You should have some sort of understanding of how to handle moves in a game, how to handle adjustments. But it's just not there in the NBA level for Darvin Ham.
And I'm not saying that, like you said, it's not that he can't coach or that he won't find a job at some point, but I feel like this was a role he wasn't quite ready for as well. Like it's hard to coach LeBron Anthony Davis in Los Angeles. That's a team that's trying to win right now because LeBron's almost fit. LeBron's almost 40. You got and like you said, he can't flip the switch and take over like he could at 30. Like no human's going to be as good at 30 as they are at 40. I just turned 30 and I can't even get out of bed without sounding like without sounding like a Rice Krispie treat getting stepped on. So obviously not casting shade or aspersions there. It's human nature. But at the same time, like the body language and the mannerisms of the team kind of showed that he never had full control. Teams were looking at it like, it's a figurehead here. So with Frank Vogel, to a lesser extent. He had been to like the Eastern Conference Finals with the Pacers a few times. Had a little bit had a little bit more weight behind what he said, as you said too. He had a little more hair on his peaches, a little bit more skin in the game at that point. We talk about Eric Spoelstra. There was rumors that LeBron and Wade wanted him out to bring in Pat Riley, who had more. Eric Spoelstra wasn't quite Eric Spoelstra yet. He kind of earned it with those
I
teams
was like, he
and
became Eric
afterwards.
Spoelstra in that
Exactly.
situation because of his knowledge of the game. He could prove the knowledge of the game and put the players in the right place to succeed. That's the difference between Spoelstra, who was a film junkie. He could
Was
tell
a
you
film
a
guy
player
before the
in
coach, like, he was the video dude, like, he knew the game, and they've credited him too, like, they've credited him with how offenses play today because he invented basically the 5 out with Chris Bosh, like Andre Iguodala has talked about it, other guys too, like, he learned it from Chip Kelly too, is what they said. He hung out with Chip Kelly to learn how to bring the spread offense to basketball. First of all,
yeah,
who does that? Second of all, what a genius. So, like,
yeah.
even then,
Well,
he didn't have that. Exactly.
there's a reason Pat Riley dubbed him his successor. At the end of the day, like that's something everybody overlooks. Like, yes, they wanted to bring Pat Riley back in as a head coach, but Pat Riley knew full well what Spoelstra was capable of because he put Spoelstra in place to succeed. Like he
Exactly,
knew what
like
he's capable of, and so it was like a different story, not a ham and cheese sandwich. Let's go with that.
exactly, and we talk Mike Brown's a good coach, like, no not a pretty good coach, like, nonetheless too. I'm just looking at the LeBron coaches. Compared to some of the other players he's in the conversation with, he hasn't had the Phil Jackson or the Pat Riley, those kind of guys. You look at the list. He hasn't made it easier on himself. Like, you can't stomp, stomp, slam, and get a backdoor layup because you wanted the challenge to play. Can't
Yeah,
quite do that like we saw in game 4, I believe it was. But at the
and
same time, like,
as
when
as a
Darvin
coaching staff, let's be clear about that too. As a coaching staff, when LeBron is complaining like that, maybe take a second to be like, maybe I should challenge that
especially when
because
you saw Jamal Murray ask for it 2 seconds later, ask for his own challenge, and Mike Malone didn't even bat an eye. He's like, "I trust my guy."
yeah, I mean, Mike Malone. I gave Mike Malone a lot of stick in the past, but let me be clear: it's not because he's not a players coach, because he is. He trusts his players wholeheartedly, but it's kind of because he's a players coach. Why I give him stick is because at the end of the day, sometimes you rely too much on your players. But on the flip side of things, that LA coaching staff, and I'm just going to clump them all together right now. I don't care who's on that staff. They're all garbage. Like you can't have the greatest current player to play the game, and we know how good of how good of basketball IQ he has. If he is calling for a challenge that adamantly, what are you going to do? Take it to the locker room with you after the end of the fourth quarter? No. So just
In the
use it.
final
Like
3 minutes too. Like, it's
like
not you're at the end of the game, basically.
yeah, you have 1 more minute to use it before you can't use it anymore. Use the thing. Period.
Exactly.
That's all it needs you need to do. So, but then as LeBron, you can't also keep going. I say the same thing about baseball players who complain about the pitch clock.
Yeah.
You just keep going.
Exactly. I mean, they scored 2 points directly while you had your back turned. Like, that's it. So you can't 6 and 1 and half a dozen the other, but it is very notable too, and I think there's gotta be a coaching change coming. You can't run this back, I feel like. Last year made sense. You got to the Western Conference Finals. Sure, you got swept, but you lost by, like, a combined, what, 22 points through 4 games, something like that? Like, it wasn't like you got
Off of bad
toasted by
coaching
anybody.
decisions late in games.
Exactly. So it made sense last year. I kinda run it back with the guys we got, make some tweaks, stay healthy. This year, I they gotta do something, but I don't know what they do. We'll have to wait and see. It's still not even we're not this isn't a Lakers podcast, so we're not gonna go too deep into those weeds, but that is
Call me. I will coach the Lakers, and I will take you to a title with LeBron on the team. It's super easy. That's all he. Just if you have two choices as a coach, you can either fight LeBron and try to take the lead, or you can accept what LeBron is, treat him as a member of your coaching staff, and let him call some of the plays, especially inbounds and late game situations. I'm going to trust LeBron. I'll be honest with you. I'll do it. I'll trust LeBron in that situation, unless there's a complete mismatch down low, in which case I'm feeding Anthony Davis the ball. Let the big man eat occasionally.
and I'm gonna need him to start eating like prime Zeke. I need him to start scooping too.
We're
Like, I
not
need
going to talk
but
about Zeke.
we're not don't worry, we'll talk about Zeke. But so that's the one we're looking at. The other one I kinda wanna look at too, because since we're talking about the first round playoff series, I kinda wanna circle forward to the another Western Conference one that actually was a true sweep. We're looking at the Suns, the Frank Vogel's new team, and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Obviously, the Timberwolves are awesome. I think we both had multiple of their players in our postseason award ranking.
Begrudgingly, but yes.
Like you had Anthony Edwards as MVP, who was an absolute dog in this series too. Like, he ran that series. Karl Anthony Towns looked really good in this series in that complimentary second player role, which I think he's really started to embrace now as well. Like I feel like his defense has even gotten a little bit better too because he's not as focused on trying to score 30, but as the number one scoring option. Now he's able to
Playing
do
down
like
low as well.
exactly. Well, yeah, but that's hard to do that when you have the leaning tower of Gobert, who this might have been his best playoff series in his life. He was never put in those weird situations like in Utah where he was just like stuck in no man's land where he couldn't puppy guard the paint. This series, he was able to do that even with all those shooters. So hats off to the Timberwolves. Whoever they play next, that's going to be quite the matchup. I'm looking forward to that one too because it looks like they've taken that next step forward. I believe they'll be matched up with the Nuggets most likely, if I'm not mistaken. I think that'll
Yeah,
be so
that
that's a series
that
I'm looking
matchup
forward to.
ends up. Well, no, sorry, that matchup ends up. Yes, it'll end up the Nuggets no matter what.
Cool. So that's a hell of a series too. Anthony Edwards, Jamal Murray, and by the way, Jamal Murray, no All Star appearances, no regular season awards, anything like that. Hall of Famer in the playoffs, though. His playoff runs it when he's been healthy. The last, I think he's been in 3 playoff runs, Western Conference Finals title, and whatever happens this year. And he's been absolutely incredible.
He's what
Jokic
Giannis
and
was for the Pistons all those years back when they got to the playoffs. Big game Chauncey, big shot Chauncey.
yeah,
There's a
makes sense.
reason Jamal plays well in the playoffs.
He takes it to a different level. So that's gonna be one heck of a matchup. But I do want to turn a little bit of a focus to the Suns, who we talk about the Lakers in that situation. I think the Suns might be the most uncomfortable position right now because you have 3 superstar players, which is great. Problem is they don't really fit together necessarily. It was random drafting without plug and play. Like it was you didn't they did not line up together. It was a square peg in a circle hole. You have Bradley Beal, who's a high volume shooting guard who can get you 20. He's like reminds me of like Carmelo Anthony back in the day. You can't he's not going to give you he's not take 7 shots and give you 20. He needs to get his rhythm going. Then he catches fire and that's when he suddenly starts to cook. We saw that as a problem in the series. He as that third option, he was very spotty and he couldn't quite he's a rhythm guy. He's not Kevin Durant who could score 30 on 4 shots. He's not that those guys are rare. Bradley Beal's a high volume guy. Devin Booker, also a bit of a volume guy, a little bit more efficient, but a little more of a volume guy. Had a slow start to the series, then started scorching down the stretch, but it was too late. And Kevin Durant's Kevin Durant. We already know that. Problem is none of them can really play point guard. They can bring the ball up the court, they can pass it, but they can't play point guard and run a show. At center, you're limited. I mean, like, sure, yeah, his name eludes me off the top of my head. The guy from Portland, Jurkic.
Yusuf
There we go. Yeah.
Nurkic.
Yes, that he's good, but like at the same time, they're not really a difference maker down there. That Kevin Durant's mid-range game is still unparalleled. We know that. Devin Booker, great mid-range game too, but needs a little more volume. It just doesn't make sense. You don't have a point guard. You have a center, and then Kevin Durant has to play your power forward, but he's more of a small forward these days with how he plays too, a little more free flowing. It's not the same. He's not posting people up like he did in Golden State at some points or even in Oklahoma City. Now he's more of that. He's the ball handler off of it, running the pick and roll or the pick and pop. Kind of think Dirk Nowitzki-esque almost, just with a little bit less of the post game. So this is just a mess because you can't. There's no Bradley Beal has no trade clause. Nobody's going to take that contract. Devin Booker's not going anywhere. That's your crown Pete. That's your crown jewel to your franchise. That's the franchise leader right now and your youngest superstar. And Kevin Durant, you just traded for him. You can't really trade him in. Like, what are you gonna do? Trade Kevin Durant a year after you just traded for him? You have no draft picks. You have no financial flexibility. The Suns are kind of a mess right now, and I feel for Frank Vogel because there is the rumor that he bargained and hit the table and pounded the desk saying we need to get a point guard, and instead ownership was basically like, "No, we're gonna give you Bradley Beal." Like, no, point guard, please. No, how about Bradley Beal? He's awesome. Point guard, Bradley Beal. Okay, and you didn't even get to see him play that. They couldn't stay healthy consistently throughout the year too, so they didn't get a chemistry to go along with it. So they couldn't just out talent people at the same time. It was a it's a very messy situation. I don't know what they kind of are stuck with well, let's run it back next year. But hopefully we do a little bit better. There's not a whole lot of flexibility they could do it. In the West, good luck. That's gonna be really tough next year. They'll get in the playoffs, but what is it gonna be copy and paste next year? Like what's gonna happen next year?
I I have a differing opinion on this one. Go figure. I have a differing opinion. I think this could have worked, and I'm going to go back to what I said about coaching as a main point of why it didn't work. When you have Bradley Bill and you have Devin Booker and you put them in the 1 and 2 roles, but then you have the 2 guard carrying the ball up, running it as a point guard, and your point guard is running as a point or as a shooting guard. How good is that actually going to be for you successfully? Like how good is as a player if you're being asked to play as a point guard? but you're being put in the position and plays while you're on the court as a point to run as a shooting guard. How good are you really going to be? You're going to have mixed messages because you're going to be trying to make plays like a point guard while you're on the court as a point guard. And this is what was happening most of the time. You'd have Bradley Beal be put on the court as a 1. You'd have Devin at the 2. Then you'd have Devin bring the ball up and start the offense. Last time I checked, the entire job of a point guard is to start the offense and then play off ball. That's the entire job of a point guard when on offense. Start the offense, make the right pass. Don't be afraid to make the extra pass. So you'd have nights where Bradley Beal would give you 10, 15, not give you a full 25 like he had been giving in Washington because he's being asked to be a 1 but play as a 2. Then you have Devin, who is a 2 guard. I mean, let's be honest, as a 2 guard, he is a great 2 guard.
Top 3 2 guard in the game.
But then
Maybe top 2.
you have him bringing up the ball and starting the offense. So for him, he's now in the mindset of, well, I'm supposed to be coming off ball screens and just jacking shots up and this, that, and the other, and he can't get into the mode of that because he's bringing the ball up. And this is where the disconnect comes. Frank Vogel's system didn't efficiently take into account what they wanted. He wanted a point guard so bad that he just said, we're going to run point with these 2 guys interchangeably on the court together. And that's a problem for a mindset for a player. You can't ask somebody who their entire career has been this and this to, in the middle of a game on the fly without coming off the court. You can't ask them to have the mindset of being a point guard and a shooting guard simultaneously because you do 2 different things in today's NBA. And that's where the problem really came for me. Besides the fact that KD playing a 4 was always a bad choice. That should never. Like, who's your next option as a 4 guard? You're going to ask Eric Gordon to play 4? No. You're going to ask Nasir Little, who maybe was probably the only other option there, but he's a small forward. You had Royce O'Neal. When has Royce O'Neal ever been effective in the league? Really? Other than a short stint with Utah, and I do mean very short. There was no options for KD to not play the 4. And then when you have KD designated as a 4, you lose so much because in today's day and age, you have younger, faster, longer 4s that could match up with KD easier. And so now he loses that mismatch option that he used to have as a 3 when he has a 7+ foot wingspan and was able to just shoot over everybody. He loses that mismatch. So now you have to try to adjust your offense. And again, Frank Vogel never adjusted his offense to match his personnel. And this is the same thing I talked about in the NFL when I talked about bringing players like quarterbacks in that can run the ball. Coaches sometimes have a bigger ego than they should. And this is a situation where I think Frank Vogel came in with an ego and said, I'm going to play my system and we're going to make it work no matter what. The only point guard, by the way, on their roster, Isaiah Thomas. Fun fact for you.
Who's a high volume shooting point guard in his heyday as well.
When did we ever see Isaiah Thomas on the court, though, for real?
Not during meaningful minutes, and there's unfortunately a reason for that. That hip injury and age has kind of worn down what made him so explosive and good on top of it. And he wasn't.
At the same time, when you're a point guard, you can make the plays like a point guard when you're not asked to score. He could easily have brought the ball up and let Booker, Bill, and KD run a 2-3-4. Like that's it. You run the 2, 3, and 4, and then you have IT just start the offense. Now go sit your butt in the corner, IT, and let them do whatever they want to do. You do that, you instantly have all your mismatches. You instantly have all the ability to run an efficient offense. But the inability to adapt to your playing style is why the Suns failed and why they failed so miserably this year in my eyes. And I get everybody wants to say that they didn't have a point guard, and that's a big reason. I'd take it a step further and say your offense didn't match your personnel either. There's offenses all around the league that their backcourt does not have a point guard, really. But they make it work because when they're on the court as a point, they're asked to do things like a point guard. And that's how they make it work. When Frank Vogel put a guy on the court as a point, he told him, you're going to play shooting guard on offense. And that doesn't make any sense for anybody. Today's day and age is not the day where you have cross matchups like you used to back in the day. We have MJ guarding a 2 on one side, and then he's playing against a 3 on the other. We don't see that anymore. Today's day and age is completely different. And if you can't adapt to what's on your roster, you shouldn't be a head coach. I was going to say the same thing. I'd really copy and paste from Darvin Ham here. Right here. I don't think Frank Vogel was the right option. Didn't work out. If you run it back with Frank Vogel, I'm sorry, Phoenix fans. Um, that's not going to be fun for you next year unless you get a Chris Paul again into this team, which I don't think is happening anytime soon.
I don't know if Chris Paul might be a little bit long in the tooth for that as well, so it might still hinder some of the issues they had defensively because they sure as heck could not stop anybody too with the lineups that they
Yeah, that's
had.
a
Like,
whole
it
different story too.
defensively was a complete issue as well, and for reference as well too, Devin Booker was treated as, like, the quote, unquote, "point guard" a lot. He did average 7 assists, but that's not running the offense. That's the catch too. You can look at guys that he averaged more assists than a lot of guys listed, but there's a difference between running the offense. He had 27 and 7. That is awesome. Problem is that didn't really run the offense. That's because Devin Booker is awesome. And on top of it, health-wise, these guys played how many games together? Like
Not enough.
20 during the regular season,
Not
maybe,
not as
give or take.
embarrassing not as embarrassing as the Brooklyn Nets big 3 trio with
Well,
KD, Harden, and
that's an
Kyrie,
anomaly of mess all by itself. Like, that
but
gets its own category.
this wasn't actually far away from that because they played 13 games together, and then the Suns, I believe, like you said, 20, 25 maybe together as a trio?
Something like that as well too. Like, weird enough, Kevin Durant, the old man of the group, was the one who was relatively healthy. I think played 77 games or something like that. So, fortunately, just Booker and Beal weirdly unintentionally staggered when they got banged up. Is very weird season. Maybe next year they could figure out the roles, get it defined, bring back campaign to play points. I don't know. Figure something out there as well. But that'll be their issue to figure out. We got
Kane is having his own issues right now against the Knicks in the playoffs, so I don't know if he's gonna be brought back to Philly, so they might have another
one
option.
of those things like how California Robert Woods was a different animal. Maybe Arizona campaign is just something different. Maybe he just has to be in Arizona. I don't know. Weirder things have happened. You gotta try something. You don't have a lot of financial flexibility in Arizona. So
Yeah.
they gotta try something, I guess. But let us know down below in the comments what playoff matchups disappointed you, intrigued you, and what you're looking forward to the rest of the playoffs. And before we jump out on this, the same note, a little fun fact that everyone has already seen on social media. This is the second round since 2009, I believe, without Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, or LeBron James in it. So a bit of a changing of the guard, kind of
I was
looking forward.
literally I was just thinking, like, I really hate this playoffs, but I realized it wasn't because any of those situations. It was truly because this is the first time
Mm,
in since 2002 in which my team actually had a chance to be in the playoffs for real, and got bounced in the play-in tournament, and I was like, "I don't care anymore."
mm.
And obviously, I'm talking about the Kings, if nobody knows the history of the Kings in the playoffs. They gave me false hope 1 year, 2 years now, and now I'm like, "Oh gosh, they're not in the playoffs. How dire is this?"
Mm.
I'm just kidding. I still watch the games. I'm just a little less invested, it feels like. A little less emotionally invested.
Not the same as last year when the beam was regularly lit. Like right now, the beam's just kind of flickering a little bit,
It's
but
just lit in my heart now.
and it's a dark, dark place in there sometimes,
Yeah.
especially right now. But anyway, that is a good note here to wrap up the tip off. That is going to take us now into Kelsey's second favorite part of every show, and that is the main event. And for the main event, you guessed it, we're here to talk a little bit about what's going on in the NFL draft, having wrapped up. All rounds are done. 7 rounds in, 270 or so players drafted. All the mock drafts, all the prospect rankings, everything all wrapped up now. We know where they're going to be next year. Now is the time to start getting overly critical even before they've taken so much as a mini camp snap. Now's the time to see what we liked, what we didn't like, who we're going to say wasn't a great pick now, who's going to be Puka Nakua next year, and who we think is a great pick and is going to, well, not be so great next year. We're going to go ahead and recap these NFL drafts, looking at teams. Just we're going to pick a couple teams we like what they did, and a couple of teams that we didn't like. And for the sake of fun, I'm going to go first with this one because I'm going to start with one that I really, really liked, and we did not have to wait very long for us to see why they were likable. We're going to pick number 4, and I'm going to talk about the Arizona Cardinals. I absolutely love their draft. Obviously, Marvin Harrison off the top. You got arguably the best player in the draft, depending on who you talk to. Worst case scenario is you got a really, really good starting receiver. Like worst case scenario there. You got a 6'4" receiver who can run. You got Kyler Murray, a number 1 target. Round Later in round 1, you also got a chance to snag Darius Robinson, the D lineman out of Mizzou. Can play up and down the defensive line. First round pick, really good player. I think he's going to play a little bit more D tackle, especially on passing downs. Which, if you're Arizona, you need all levels of the defense because, yeah, there's a reason there's a reason they were a little bit rough last year. And honestly, the only reason they're not picking number 1 is probably because Kyler Murray came in down the stretch and played extremely well and won them a few games they probably didn't necessarily need to win. So I like that. I like that pick. Max Melton, the cornerback in round 2. A lot of people as a round 1 corner. Tall, lengthy, fast, very agile. And say what anyone wants about Jonathan Gannon. I know Eagles fans like to yell at him, even though clearly we saw what happened when he left. he knows a thing or two about defensive backs. He knows how to coach up defensive backs pretty well. So I think that's going to be a very good fit there. Trey Benson in the third round, arguably RB1. We kind of talked about. There might have been some other fits that might have fit a little bit better, but same time, Trey Benson, fast, strong, agile. He'll make some moves there. I also liked Isaiah Adams adding to the offensive line. Tip Ryman, tight end. They just had a really, really good draft class. They had a lot of picks and they made use of all of them. And I really like what Arizona did. I think they're doing a good job building, considering it wasn't that long ago their team randomly imploded when they were thought to be competitive. Normally, when that happens to a team, it takes them a little bit longer to reload. But that trade with Houston last year and able to hit on those draft picks and this year, I think has really helped turn them around. And Kyler Murray's still only 26 years old. He's he's 2 years older than Bo Nix. He's 2.5 years older than Michael Penix. Like, he's still got plenty of time, and it's too early to try and write him off because he had a late season injury in a year when the team imploded and missed most of last year. But it's far too early to write him off. So I like what Arizona did, and I think they could be a. We're gonna see how things play out a little bit longer. We're gonna wait till it's actual NFL season predictions time, but based on what they did in the draft, I think they have a sneaky good chance to surprise some people this year.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I have no complaints on that with the Cardinals. I think you're right. I think they're going to be very interesting to see. Um, Obviously, adding Marvin Harrison to your team is never a bad option. But on top of that, everything else they did was not a bad option either. Maybe not the top tier level type of picks that people would expect, but for what they need, an absolutely fantastic draft.
Felt like no bad picks, even if there could have been better picks, but like there was no bad picks, is what I liked about it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was very efficient, very smart in the way they pick, very safe. Maybe some might think, which is okay. You don't need to have big hitters every single time. Sometimes you do need to take. I'm obviously not talking about Marvin Harrison when I say safe, although might be the
Doesn't
safest
get
pick
much
ever
doesn't
taken.
doesn't get
Yeah,
much safer than that besides maybe Bowers or Alt, but even then it's pretty close. But and on top of that, they had 4 third round picks, which arguably is where a lot of teams is where they take that jump is when their second through fourth round picks hit. Chances of one of those hitting is a lot better now. So I like what they did, but I've gone on and on enough about the Cardinals. We talked about the Redbirds. Kelcey, it is now your turn. What is one team that whose draft class you really like?
you're going for red teams. I'm going to the blue teams, and I'm not talking about the Dallas Cowboys. I am
Hmm.
100% talking about the host of this year's draft, the Detroit Lions. Um, I said it during the draft special. I thought the Cowboys should have taken Terry Arnold. Well, they waited and they waited and they waited and they waited, and guess what the Lions went up and did? They went up and said, "We'll take that," and they went and got Terry Arnold. Huge pickup for him. Add in Ennis Rakestraw, add in Sion Vaki in the second round or later rounds as a developmental pick. I think you had a lot of good picks here for the Lions. A lot of picks that are building for the future, and especially in a hole that you had as a team, which is your secondary that you've been trying to fix for a couple years now, which last year maybe played above its weight class at times. Now you have young pieces in play to build this in the long term, and now Dan Campbell gets to go bite a whole bunch of kneecaps because the secondary are going to be covering everybody. So I think this is an interesting situation for the Lions, but I think they did a great job with where they had picks, and they did a great job working the back end of the draft and at least the first round, and really getting some quality trades in there.
Absolutely, and you mentioned as well too. Their biggest need was defense, especially in the secondary. They not only upgraded that, they were able to double down on it as well. You get Teron Arnold as well. That they did a very, very good job. There there is no reason they should not be the favorites in the North next year. I think there was any gap that Green Bay, Chicago, or anything that might have closed. I think they did a pretty good job of holding true to their spot for sure. So
Yeah,
very,
yeah,
I like what they did a lot. Teron Arnold just screams Dan Campbell brother corner to
yeah.
18. Like, it doesn't get much more Dan Campbell than Teron Arnold.
If anybody missed my analysis of Terry Arnold, it's very simple. He will beat you up for fun. That's
And then he will cover you if the play is still
And
going.
he'll just be like, "Oh, by the way, lockdown." Afterwards, after I get done beating you, and you finally, got off the line of scrimmage, I'm just gonna lock you down. So
Hmm,
good luck. So, yeah, it's gonna be impressive to see what Dan Campbell can do with that defense, especially now that he has cover guys.
exactly. And now I'm gonna go to a draft that I didn't necessarily love to. I'm not gonna say I hate any of these because I think that's overkill before we've seen them even do a mini camp, but I'm gonna talk about ones that on paper I don't like right now. We're gonna stay early in the draft. I'm gonna go with New England. I'm gonna go with the Patriots. Obviously, Drake May at number 3. You kinda had to take a quarterback there. I mean, the quarterback was on the docket. I think it depends what the trade offers were, and based on the rumors, is the GM who's not the GM and the scouts who aren't that front office is a mess. Their GM is literally basically GMing for his job right now. It doesn't make sense. Like, he's not even the official GM. What they're doing there's a mess. The owner's son is involved. It's very, very weird, but apparently it wasn't all sold on Drake May. It sounds like it came from upper basically the owner made the pick again is what it sounded like. Like, we're taking Drake May. We're getting Tom Brady's heir apparent. We like Drake May here. I think we both like him quite a bit.
Mhm.
I am a little bit worried about him in New England, unfortunately, because that
Mhm.
team is a mess. It is not quarterback friendly by any means right now. It's deteriorated rapidly. If he could sit behind Jacoby Brissett for 10 to 12 games, I think that'd be perfect. Get him some time, let him work in an NFL system, let him be a football player 24/7, not have to worry about school, etc. We know that never happens. We said the same thing with Andy Dalton and Justin Fields in Chicago a few years ago. It was like, it'll be great when he gets okay, but 3 weeks later and he's getting hit 12 times by Myles Garrett in a game. Great, that didn't work. So that I I like Drake May. I think he'll be fine. That wasn't my issue. It's as we go down the draft. Pick number 37 in round 2, you took Jalen Polk, the receiver out of Washington. Really good player, like him a lot. Probably not a second round pick receiver, not early second round, like at 37. He's someone you probably take 3rd round and feel good about it, but you had AD Mitchell on the board. You weren't that far off from Lad McConkey. I know the Chargers traded up for him, but you weren't far off from the likes of him. You just missed Keon Coleman. You could have gone with Roman Wilson out of Michigan. Like, there's a lot of other receiver targets I feel like on the board that would have been a little better served there, or you could have taken an offensive line at that point too. At Jackson Powers Johnson was still on the board. I think there was some more pressing needs there. Caden Wallace, offensive tackle out of Penn State in round 3. Good pick. That's all good. Just looking down the board too, I feel like it was a very Bill Belichick feeling draft class. The problem is you don't have Bill Belichick coaching to do it. You don't have him taking Cole Strange in the first round, but then randomly making it work and turning him really good. We don't know what Gerard Mayo is going to bring as a head coach. We don't know who your GM is. Your front office is a mess. That I don't see many scenarios in which they flip things around. They're probably going to be picking early next year. I feel bad for Drake May. This was not a great situation for someone with his development arc to go to. He could prove us all wrong and be Justin Herbert out of the gate and erase all of that. That's very possible. But as the prospect coming out, you wanted him to go somewhere where he can sit and learn in a situation that makes sense, or have like for me the perfect spot would have been Minnesota. Sit for a handful of games, then you throw up a Justin Jefferson out there somewhere while you figure it out. Again, you can say that for all the quarterbacks. That's a cheat code. But like even Washington, you got Terry McLaurin out there somewhere, I guess. But this one just feels like it's gonna be a rough one. And then Jalen Polk is a good receiver, but not not to the level it was on the board. You could have got Jalen Polk and AD Mitchell, realistically. You could have really rebuilt that receiving core, but so I'm gonna put New England as one that on paper, as of right now, I'm not overly in love with.
That's fair. I don't think there's anything I need to say more else about that.
Hmm,
I think you efficiently handled that one. Yeah,
a steady incision.
yeah, it was bad. What the Raiders or no, sorry, what the Patriots did. Sorry, spoiler alert for what my future pick is for bad. But
Hmm,
yeah, no, what the Raiders were doing was not. Patriots are doing was not a good idea. I don't know what's going on there. Sorry, I'm stuck on the Raiders here. I'm ready to go with my options.
it's
So I'm
your
just gonna
turn,
get
take
right
it away.
to it. Yeah, my bad is the Raiders. You need a quarterback. You don't take a quarterback. You don't even try to even trade up and get a quarterback. Maybe you did. You didn't really try too hard. You take Brock Bowers when you had Michael Mayer, which is again shocking to say the least. Why are you adding another weapon when you don't have a quarterback that you can trust to get him there? Look, don't get me
Yeah,
wrong. I like Gardner Minshew. I think Gardner Minshew can be an efficient stopgap quarterback, and that's nothing against Gardner. It's just really, I mean, he's proven that he's a average NFL quarterback, and you have a chance to draft a above average NFL quarterback out there. Um, but they didn't do that. They didn't try. They just took Brock Bowers. On top of that, I, there were question marks across the board for Oakland. Their later draft picks were pretty interesting. I didn't hate them, but the Brock Bowers one just left me scratching my head from the very beginning. If you're going to start a draft out, you want to make an impact from the first pick you have, and felt like they made an impact, but not in the way you'd expect. Because by
yeah,
ignoring the quarterback position and going after a tight end, you're just like, we're gonna make this work no matter what. And again, maybe I have a theme for today's episode here in not bringing in players to do what you want to do, and instead just saying your system's going to work no matter what. I don't know if this is the case, but we'll have to wait and see. I don't know. I'm just kind of flabbergasted by the Raiders, as you could tell from the fact I could not stop talking about the Raiders during your Patriots conversation.
What I'm gonna add to that too is that obviously Brock Bowers is never necessarily a bad pick 'cause of how good he is. The problem is I think they took take best player available a little bit too literally. Like I think that when you look at you mentioned too, the offense is not going to be built on explosion next year. It's going to be built on efficiency. Antonio Pierce is clearly building a defense and he's even said he's going to build the quote unquote Patrick Mahomes rules. Smart. You do not have the firepower to keep up with that. You beat them last year because you got 2 pick sixes and defensively went after him. You brought in Christian Wilkins. You hope Tyree Wilson coming off of the injury plagued rookie year can build off that with Mad Max Crosby. Like, good. I like that idea, but in that case, maybe go grab Terrion Arnold or Quinyon Mitchell. Every defensive player was on the board there. Latu. Somebody load up a little bit on that defense and go all in on that. Or on the offensive line, grab somebody. I know offensive line was a little slimmer pickings by this point. You still had options like Fuaga, Troy Fatanu. I think I wanted them to lean more into that run the ball and play defense mentality. This Brock Bowers is an elite tight end prospect, but he's not digging out a defensive end on a power O. He's a weapon. Like I don't want to use this comparison, but he's very as far as a skill set on the field, he has the Aaron Hernandez skill set as far as versatility as a tight end. You can hand the ball to him in the backfield. He's not someone that's elite blocking. So I do like Jackson Powers Johnson in the second round, so I will give him that though. I do like that one. I'm thinking him and Fuaga and Zamir White's getting 1,800 yards next year if you grab both.
Yeah, I mean, you'd go that route. I think you also try to fill in that defensive tackle role because when you could stop Patty, the one thing that would always gas you would be Isaiah Pacheco up the middle for 10 yards.
I would say if you can get a nose tackle opposite Christian Wilkins in that interior too, you just have an absolute defensive wall. That'd be the Raiders defense that they've been asking for years with something like that up front.
Yeah. So I don't know. The Raiders just flabbergasted me. I'm so shocked by that one. I'm just still. It really was the Brock Bowers one that really just kind of set me off on that one. I was just like, what? Why?
It just didn't make a lot of sense as well. That's why I don't know either. It flabbergasted me, but you know what? I guess we'll see. Their offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy, ran 2 tight end sets, the 6th most in the NFL last year, something like that. I saw a weird stat on. So maybe this was the plan all along. I don't know what the Raiders. You never know. It's literally in their history to not exactly know. But I'm gonna go ahead and go quickly through this next one that I do like so we can get cruising. I'm gonna stay in the AFC East and I'm gonna go to one that our comment section during the live draft did not necessarily love. I'm going to the New York Fireman Ed Jets. I really like the draft class they had, considering they also didn't have a second round pick because of the Aaron Rodgers trade. Olu Fashanu in round 1, 11 overall. We both know Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses. One of them is going to miss at least a game. It's on MetLife Field, and those two have had injury concerns, well, for Tyron Smith the last 10 years. So I like Olu Fashanu since he was like 2014, something like that. Since Tony Romo was under center. It's been that long. He's a really good athletic left tackle. Love the pick there. Malachi Corley in round 3. You mean you have Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams on the outside, and then you could just RPO flick it to Malachi Corley as NFL Network so elegantly described a sawed-off Deebo Samuel. Like you just flick it to him and watch him truck stick people in the open field.
Best line out of the draft, I think, the entire weekend going into it. That was like when I heard that, I had to share that with everybody because that was fantastic.
Exactly. Like a perfect fit to complement the Garrett Wilson. You stick him in the slot, you throw him a slang, you throw him a drag, you throw him a swing, and watch him destroy people in the open field. He's like a running back. And by the way, round 4, you get a running back in Braylon Allen out of Wisconsin. And I think it's calling him a Mack truck is almost insulting to him because he's more than a Mack truck as far as when he delivers blows in the open field. Like he runs through people to complement Breece Hall. That's going to be
I think both the running backs they got here are the same way. Isaiah Davis as well. They got in the 6th round, or sorry, 5th round.
Exactly. We're working on it.
Or just like give him the ball and watch him roll for 4 yards.
Just rumble forwards, and then Breece Hall's your change of pace, can do everything back. Like he's your every down back, but then you throw in these guys to just hurt people and just to hurt the defense a little bit. Also, weirdly, I like taking Jordan Travis in round 5 because you get a potential quarterback of the future who I think doesn't go in round 5 if he's not coming off a destroyed ankle. I think if he's healthy, he's at least a round 2, 3 guy. I think he bridges that gap between those first round guys and Spencer Rattler very well. maybe even makes a case for a first round. You never know. I think there is some talent there. You get him, and he's not a threat to Aaron Rodgers, quote unquote. So it's not like if you took Drake May in the first round or JJ McCarthy or something like that. You
Yeah.
better the team. You you did trade Zach Wilson, so there's nobody else on the roster at this point. And if God forbid something does happen, maybe Jordan Travis does play next year. We know how MetLife Field likes to completely takes Jets fans' hearts away. I'm not anticipating him to play, but I think that's a really good pick for him to. Let's say you get Aaron Rodgers for 2 years. Let's say you get 2 more years out of him. You Jordan Travis to sit for 2 years, come in, see what you got. So I really like the Jets draft grade. Despite what some Jets fans would say, I like the draft class overall. Was it electric? Not necessarily, but it was very sturdy. And I think they've had the flashy draft classes the last 3 years. Brees Hall, Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, Jermaine Johnson. They've already done all that. Now you just need to be now it needs to be efficient and solid. And this division, you never know. This division's a mess right now. They might have made just enough moves to make it interesting.
Yeah, and we talked about this with the Jets, what, 2 years ago with the draft? They just have to make the right draft picks 2 years ago. They decided to go a little home run hitter. They missed on Zach Wilson, whatever. So be it. 3 years ago. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, you've made the right picks since then. Robert Saleh has done the right thing since then. I think the underrated part of their draft, and I think this is one that I just really like the story on. Quantez Stiggers, who is out of the CFL. Weird story for him. He went to college, he transferred, and then transferred again. But turns out, or he transferred out of Yale. He was a Ivy League guy, and in Ivy League has a rule you're only allowed to play 4 years. Well, in doing so, he wasn't granted a year of eligibility. So turns out that he was actually eligible for the draft and not eligible for the draft and had to go through free agency. Weird story about that. He ended up in the CFL instead and ended up getting drafted out of the Argonauts there. So interesting story for him. Either that or he was the DoorDash. No, he was the DoorDash driver that went to the CFL and then got drafted, which is really cool. Nobody's ever been drafted out of the CFL. Um, but yeah, I mean, don't know if he makes the team, but if he does, I mean, he was rookie of the year in the CFL. So he does have talent. There's no question about it. So we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, I don't hate the Jets picks at all. I think that was it. It was a good draft. It wasn't anything flashy. It wasn't. It was just kind of it was there.
It was just what the doctor ordered if they could stay healthy.
Yeah. So that'll take me to my kind of, I guess I'll call it a flashy draft here. I'm gonna go the Washington Commanders with a flashy draft. You take Jaden Daniels, and then they're the team that takes Johnny Newton in the second round.
They
A
got
guy
so
who
many
I
defensive tackles. They got
yeah,
so
a
many.
guy who I think was the best defensive tackle in the game or on the in the draft. Sorry, Murphy, but in my eyes, I think he was the most complete. Um, he definitely had the size for it. That's for sure. Should have been taking it earlier in the first round, but you know what? He slipped to the second round, so it worked out. Mike Sainristil, talk about a guy who made a absolute impact in the defensive side of the ball, and by the way, started as a receiver. So if Washington gets hurt, he can just slide on over. But
Mhm.
I see him starting in at that DB position for a long time to come. And then Ben Sinnott, who in my eyes is top 5 tight end of this draft. You couldn't really ask for more there out of Kansas State. Sliding down later on, they got Luke McCaffrey in round 3, who is arguably some people's in some people's top 5 wide receivers in this draft, which I don't agree with, but definitely top 10. And then kind of the maybe big still, Javante Jean Baptiste out of Notre Dame, who is a project guy, but defensive end who just adds to the Commanders' arsenal of defensive linemen that they seem to churn out that are fantastic. Yeah, it was a good draft, top to bottom. I think they made the right picks in certain places, but made a splash in other places, so it worked out really well for them.
Can't go a whole lot. They had a lot of needs and then a good amount of picks. And I think once they got their quarterback, their goal here is to build around them the best they can and get a secondary that's not wet tissue paper like last year's was. And I think Mike Sainstro will definitely help that. If nothing else, he will make that nickel spot better. So it forces him to at least throw outside every time. At least
Yeah,
it's a little harder that way.
and it's like not like you had to worry about getting wide receivers or really I'd even say running back. You didn't really have to worry about that if you're the Commanders, so you were fine.
Exactly. You needed offensive line and then defense as a whole along
They
with that
filled they
quarterback.
filled the offensive line positions well in the middle part of the draft. It wasn't. I mean, they can still do some work in free agency to fill out everything. I'm not hoping they have a great free
Mhm.
agency here. Just efficient, just good enough. Maybe don't finish in the basement.
That being said, Jaden Daniels, slide. Just in advance, slide. Just looking
Slide.
out for you, son. Just looking out for you. But Last one we have, I'm gonna go with the last one that I'm questioning. I'm gonna word this one. I'll go through it quickly. It's the obvious one. We're looking at the Atlanta Falcons, the big what of the entire draft. This is a Michael Penix Jr. Stan account, and it always has been, it always will be. But what are you doing, Atlanta? You spent $100 million on $160 million, excuse me, on a 36-year-old quarterback coming off a torn Achilles 6 weeks ago.
You're a lot nicer than I was. I was going to call him a Coles cover model, but okay.
I'm working my way there. You didn't let me get through all my adjectives. I gotta take a breath here. This was gonna go on for a while, but we're gonna shorten it up now. Point is, you want to get a successor to him. Fine. You think you're gonna lose draft picks because of tampering, so you wanted to overthink it. Fine. You don't take the 24-year-old quarterback who's ready to play now. You don't take the guy who is going to be. Is there one part of the field that Michael Penix can't throw to? No. Like he can decorate the entire field with the ball. Like it is absolutely beautiful. The question is, when the first read isn't there, and he starts to get blitzed, he can't panic and be like, "Oh, Adune's out there somewhere." He's got to find checkdowns in the middle of the field, but that's stuff he'll learn, and it could just be offensive based too. That's another story. I don't know what you have pick number 8. Let's say you really want Michael Penix. That's your dude. Trade back to 11. Trade back with the Vikings. Let them come up and take an extra pick somewhere. Like
Get
let
back with
them
the Rangers.
like I highly, highly doubt anyone was coming up for Michael Penix. We like a lot of people liked him. He was a first round pick. I think if you're Atlanta, you can risk trading back a little bit. If you lose him, that sucks. Then you go grab Dallas Turner, Latu, Terron Arnold, and you go for that damn Super Bowl run you're supposed to be going on. And you sign Kirk Cousins to a 4-year deal. You've had the 7th pick in the draft for 4 years in a row, and you've hit on all of them so far. With Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London. I know Kyle Pitts was number 4, but you get my point. They're perennially a top 10 pick right now. And if you didn't bring in Kirk Cousins, this is a awesome pick. Getting Michael Penix here, you didn't have to trade up. You spent so many assets on Kirk Cousins. Like it's a game of assets, and you're playing Monopoly. You emptied out your load to put 'em to put all your hotels on whatever the brown ones are at the very top that I can't think of. Then you use your Broadway then you sell your Broadway. Like it just doesn't make sense what they were doing there. And just to go through the rest of the draft too, you trade up again. You trade up, sorry, not again. You trade up in the second round to get Rook. I don't even know if I'm doing that right. He's a good player, but you get Scooby Dooby Doo, whatever. Where are you? You don't trade up for him in round 2. You could have got him just fine where you were. Then you look at the talent that was on the board there too. Round 2 was surprisingly loaded for the first 20 picks of the second round, something like that. Like there was a lot of good leftover players. Braylon Trice, good third round pick. Actually, that's the one that I like so far. I think if that was your second round pick, I'd have been like, good pick. So I like that one. Brandon Dorius, okay. JD Birch. It was just not Jace McClain in a pretty okay pick. Like they just didn't have any. There's just more questions than answers. There's just too many more questions than answers. And it doesn't feel like this doesn't have a conducive feeling of in a division where you just have to be kind of okay and you'll win the division. I don't know if you necessarily changed anything at this point, unless Kirk Cousins comes out and playing like the Colts cash baller that he can be. And then you wasted the 8th overall pick. It could have made you that team to win multiple playoff games, I guess. But I don't get it. I love Michael Penix. I feel bad for him going to this situation too. He doesn't really get a chance to go out there necessarily. And then if he does, he has to answer this the whole season too. So like, so when do you plan on getting out there? What's he supposed to say right now? Or what's he supposed to say? F Kirko, let me out there now. Or hey, I'm going to try my best. I'm going to keep learning. Like man's 24. He's ready to go. I'm done. I'm done ranting about Atlanta. I don't like it. Kelcey, it's your turn.
Yeah. I could go one more negative or
You
positive.
can
I don't
piggyback on them if you want. I'm good.
No. I have a different negative here I want to talk about. And I'm going to go straight to the heart here and talk about them Cowboys.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the biggest problem with the Cowboys is that going into this offseason, Jerry Jones says we're all in for 2024 like he does every offseason. But this year, unlike every offseason, he didn't do anything in free agency.
He even said I didn't understand our cap situation when I said that. It's like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah. So completely quiet during free agency. And then, despite the fact he didn't understand the cap space, he doubles down and says, we're all in, we're all in, and we're all in for 2024. And then you trade down in the draft to just take Tyler Guyton. I like Tyler Guyton. Let me be very clear. Like Tyler Guyton as a pick. Don't like Tyler Guyton when there was Terry and Arnold on the board. When there was A.D. Mitchell and you had just lost Michael Gallup, who just signed with the Raiders, by the way. Day 2. Oh, I don't know what you could do. Maybe take a running back, considering you got none. No, instead of taking Jonathan Brooks or Blake Corum or
Marshawn Lloyd.
Marshawn Lloyd, take your pick of running backs there in that round, in the second, third round. You're taking any one of them. No, instead you decide to just opt out of doing any of that. Draft Marshawn Nealand out of Western Michigan. No offense to Marshawn Nealand, but I really had him as a third round grade. I didn't really have him as a second guy.
Pretty good player, but it's like that's
Okay,
yeah.
really? When you need a running back
Luka roll again.
and then going down the draft, look, Cooper Beebe's a good pick. That's fine. I'm fine with that as an interior offensive lineman with Kansas State.
Good value there.
They're not interior offensive lineman with the best of them. Notre Dame's linebacker, though, really? Liufu? No. Kalen Carson out of Wake Forest? Probably not. Ryan Flournoy out of Southeast Missouri State. Are we going for Jerry Rice here, guys? What are we going for? I don't mind Flournoy, but let me be very clear. I don't mind Flournoy as a pick. Again, though, there's other options. Nate Thomas, Louisiana. Why? I guess you need a tackle, so let's just throw him in there. That's why. And then this one hurts me to say, but Justin Rogers with 244 out of Auburn. You're my guy, Justin, but why? Why is that the pick you took there? I don't know. It was just very questionable that the Cowboys are all in for 2024, and then they just mail it in free agency in the draft. And what are you going to do, guys? What is happening? If you're going to beat them boys, how are you going to beat them boys? Because right now you're looking like them sitting on the sideline boys.
They're looking like the tradition of nobody winning back-to-back NFC East titles, boys, is going to continue for another year.
It's embarrassing, man. Especially when the Eagles and the Commanders, and I'd even say the Giants had a better draft than them.
Giants had a good one.
You can't look at this and think this is a good idea. I'm gonna stand by it. The Cowboys will not get to the Super Bowl until Jerry Jones and Brett Jones are out of that office.
And Steven.
No offense to the Joneses, they've done a great thing in Dallas, but it's proven now that you have no idea what you're doing as owner of the team. As you just admitted, we're all in. Oh, wait, what? We have no cap space, or we have a mixture of cap space? Yeah, don't do that. Let's not go there. And then you re-sign Zeke. Come on, guys. There's so many other options here. You could have gone and gotten any one of these rookie running backs that didn't get picked up. Maybe the kid out of Louisville would have been a good option. But you didn't do that. You just sat there on your hands and said, we're going to get the guy out of Ohio State that won a national title like 20 years ago. That's going to be the guy who's literally his knees can't carry him up and down the field anymore, like Todd Gurley. Like, that's what we're going to do. No offense to Zeke. Zeke had a great run in Dallas. Congratulations, but it's not. No.
The best part is
a terrible quarterback and a terrible running back and no offensive line protection and two good receivers that aren't going to get the ball.
The best part about it is not only does Zeke sign the 1-year deal with him, he's still technically getting paid from the initial deal he signed with Dallas. There's still $6 million coming to him this year, if I'm not mistaken, from that deal.
Paychecks from Dallas.
But he's getting paid twice from Dallas this year. So you know what? Good on Zeke. Good on him. He managed to score pretty big there. But obviously, let us know down below in the comments what draft classes you liked, which ones you have questions about too. Obviously, there's some pretty good ones on paper. Eagles, Ravens. You make a case for the Colts, Giants, Bears. Like, there's a lot of good ones. We don't have. This isn't an 18-hour grades show. Seahawks, like, see, we can go on and on and on about this. So let us know down below which ones you liked and which ones you didn't necessarily love as much too. And we look forward to seeing this play out. So this will be a lot of fun. And this will be one of the final steps leading into our NFL predictions going into next year. So we're one step closer to our infamous segment every year. But that's going to do it here for the main event. And that is going to now take us into Kelcey's favorite part of every show, and that is Crunch Time. And Crunch Time is, of course, brought to you by our good friends over at Outlier. Go to outlier.bet /HighLowSports. Get yourself a free 7-day trial to bet smarter, not harder. And for Crunch Time, we started doing a little bit something unique. We do performance of the week, plays of the week, something along those lines. I'm going to go first with this one. And here's what we're going to look at for play of the week here. We're going to go to the Arizona Diamondbacks. But we're not going to any other players. We're not going to anything in particular. We're going to the beekeeper who took care of the bee infestation, I think is what we will call it, on that net as well. I have never seen so many bees like that in my life. Goes in there and completely rescues them. And he threw out the first pitch too. Like, talk about a busy day. You're just minding your own business. Next thing you know, you get called into work, take care of it, and then you get to throw out the first pitch at a Diamondbacks game and do it on air on TV interview. So this is my performance of the week because what an interesting situation. When I was younger, there was bears that would wander into the schools because they come down from the mountains. Even I had never seen anything quite like this. So kudos to you, bear keeper, sir. And you know what, Diamondbacks, that's a quality tweet of going to tell our kids this is Jason Statham because he definitely saved the day.
Yeah, that's a good one. I actually chuckled when I saw you put that up because I did just see a joke on that. It's the MLB movie,
Mhm.
B symbol, an MLB movie. Anyways,
Mm.
thought that was pretty good. Yeah, I don't have any fancy pictures to put up here, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna go ahead and say it was Vinny Jr. for me for the performance of the week. What his performance was against Bayern Munich was absolutely outstanding. Easily Champions League Player of the Week for me. Um, yeah, no doubt about it. Vinny's just had a heck of a run. Guy who I love to hate on, but Hector will forever love. Our good friend Hector over at Insert Name FC. Um, I'm gonna give it to Vinny on this one because it's been, yeah. There's not a single player I could even try to nominate that had a better week than him, to say the least.
Absolutely. A wonderful week of performances. So we appreciate y'all for joining us here this week on the High Low Sports Podcast. Let us know down in the comment section below any performances you would like to see for performance of the week next week. We appreciate y'all for joining us, and we will see you all again next time.